you. Once again, Paul reminds us, not perfect, not made it there, still in struggle, still at the same place in life that all of you are, where I am. Too often we glorify religious figures, make it to where this person is spiritually. Then I've achieved my goal. Well, Paul lets them know right off the bat. He says, I've not made it to where you want to be. But he says, here's something I do. It's actually two things in one. He said, I pursue as my goal the prize promised by God's heavenly call in Christ Jesus. And he says to do that, he says, I forget what's behind. He's not talking about forgetting your testimony or forgetting how you can glorify God. But he says, I forget it, and that I'm not repeating the same mistakes over and over again. You ever do that? I'm the world's worst. You think sticking your finger in the light socket's enough once, right? But then you go, maybe they turned the switch off this time. Nope. Paul says, I forget what I did before. I try to lay the attraction of my former sin aside. I don't glorify my previous life and think about back in the good old days, which were the bad old days. And he says, number two, I don't make it a bragging point. Too many times in our Christianity, we take what we call our testimony, and it becomes a bragging point about all the things we used to do and we used to get away with. And we start glorifying our sin when we should be glorifying the one who saved us from our sin. That's the difference between a testimony and bragging about it, or glorifying our sin. Paul says, I stopped glorifying my sin. I laid that back and said, no more. But he said, I'm reaching forward to what is ahead. I'm going to lay down the things that turn my heart away from Christ and forward to the things that are going to turn my life towards Christ. It's practicing how you want to play. Remember, what Paul does is he is reaching to achieve his goal. How many people, when you watch someone in the Olympics or you watch someone in a race, how many people see someone reaching for the ribbon at the end of the race and they do this and reach back? That's not at all what they do. What do you do when you see there and there's so heels? The whole world is chasing them. What do they reach forward. They're reaching towards where they want to go. So Paul says he's not glorified yet. His pursuit is to reach forward to anything that can bring him closer to Jesus Christ. When's the last time you reached out and grabbed a hold of your word when you were in struggle? Or when the last time that you were tangled up in this world and you forget that it is not about this world, but it is about the glory to come in the next, and that relationship with Jesus Christ. And all of a sudden, the first thing you do when times are tough is you go, I'm just not going to make it to church this week. I just can't pick up my word. My prayer life's gone down the toilet. I'm going to go hang out and do something that I know I shouldn't do. And we start reaching behind. What we should be doing is reaching forward for those things that are profitable in our work with Christ. When's the last time when you were down and you were struggling, you picked your eyes up and you looked and you said, where is the next person that God is sending me to share the gospel message? Because that's right where Paul's at right now. He's in a tough spot. And what Paul is looking forward to, if you notice in every one of Paul's letters that he's writing from prison, what does he say? I can't wait to be with you. I want to share some fruit with you. That's what Paul's thinking about. That's the number one thing that keeps Paul going. In the midst of everything, he's reaching forward for those things that are going to renew and refresh his spirit. Because guess what? Jesus hadn't gone anywhere. We may talk about him like he's somewhere far off and he's somewhere distant. Jesus hadn't gone anywhere. He's right there. What happens is our heart goes somewhere else. Our minds go somewhere else. And so Paul says, quit reaching back to what you know doesn't work and reach forward to what you know does. And he says, if you think differently about anything, God will reveal this to you also. God says, Paul says, if you don't believe me, Chamberlain is the guy who scored 100 points in an NBA game. I can't score 2 points against those kids in the back. Wilt Chamberlain's 7 foot tall. Big guy. I think he started like Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger or something. A huge guy. And in the game that he scored 100 points, that was in the midst of a season where he was shooting the granny shot at the foul line. In that season, the 61 to 62 season, Wilt Chamberlain, who was at best a 50% person at the free throw line, and everybody knew it. And so when it came crunch time, the greatest scorer on the team, they'd foul him because he ain't going to make the foul shot. That season, he started copying a guy named Rick Barry. And he started in that game, he went 28 for 32 to score 100 points. That's well over his 50%. And in that season, the guy who was a 31% free throw shooter for his career shot 51% of all of his free throws, from 30 to 50%. But you know what he did? He quit shooting the next season. He never scored 100 points again. He never had a season as high scoring as that 61-62 season. And the reason is because he quit shooting the granny shot. He said, I felt like a sissy shooting underhanded. He said, I know I was wrong. I know some of the best foul shooters in history shot that way, but I just couldn't do it. He had to find out the hard way. He knew what was right, and yet he had to find out the hard way and stuck with the hard way the rest of his life. Now, he's somewhere around number 7, number 8 in all-time scoring, but can you imagine if this guy who was an all-time great could have been the best if he would have laid aside what the world thought and done what he knew was right, but he had to find out the hard way that I'm going to be a 30% free throw shooter for the rest of my life because I refuse to do what I know is right. But Paul says, in any case, we should live up to whatever truth we have attained. Join in imitating me, brothers and sisters, and pay careful attention to those who live according to the example you have in us. Now, when Paul says, live up to whatever truth we have attained, today there are a lot of people that take that out of context and they say, well, my truth is different than your truth, and truth is relative to my situation. It doesn't mean whatever truth you have attained or whatever truth you have discovered, truth, I use the word loosely, on the internet, or from your friend's philosophy, or from some Eastern religion. When he says, I want you to live up to the truth you have attained, what Paul's saying is I understand that each and every one of you is in a different place in your process of sanctification. That, as Paul has already said twice, none of us have fully reached glorification yet. None of us have truly reached the glory of Jesus Christ yet in our lives. And so there are a lot of times I shouldn't expect you to react the same as me. You see, if I see you and you're a new Christian, you're struggling with something, I shouldn't look down on you and go, that person, they just ain't going to make it. There's no use. I should look at them and I should understand and encourage them. They're in a different place in their life and their sanctification. And maybe what they need is some discipleship. And maybe what they need is some encouragement. And maybe what they need is some growth. And there are some of you here that God has sent to do that very same thing. And what Paul says is, I want you to look at where you're at in your life. I want you to think about where you're at in your life. I want you to think about the things that God has brought you through. I want you to think about how he has uniquely placed you in a position to look and go, I've been where that other person is right now. I understand. I've attained that truth and that knowledge that Jesus Christ led me through the struggle and through the hard time. And the last thing I want is to see that person go through that struggle the same way that I did. And so Paul says, live up to whatever truth you've attained,